Frederick, we're not ready. Welcome to the latest installment of Buford and Sons, featuring me, Bill Buford, our cinematographer, whom you'll never see, George Buford, and our director, making a sartorial debut of his new silk pajamas, Frederick Buford. Today, we are making French apple pie, otherwise known as tart de pomme, which is different from American apple pie in small respects. The fruit is less sweetened, if sweetened at all, and it resides upon a bed of applesauce. And in a big way, mainly the pastry, which is a French pastry, a pâte brisée in this case, one of those butter pastries that are a little tricky to make, that I've always had difficulty with, until I went to a cooking school and learned some basic tricks.
Get it. You went to a cooking school. Come on.
So what we have here is the fruit of the end of summer, the beginning of fall. And all this fruit can actually go with the pastry that we're going to make. The pastry is so crispy and buttery and sweet that the only thing you need is a little bit of cooked fruit, and it's a beautiful dish. Here we have the end of the plums. Plum in the French pastry is fantastic, very simple by itself. We have the end of the season peaches, ditto. We have the beginning of the next season quince, which is a fabulous fruit, which is part pear, part apple, very tricky to work with, but a beautifully fragrant fruit. And then, of course, we have our apples, which is going to be the heart of what we're preparing today, our French apple pie. Do 5 apples? We're making a lot of applesauce today.
I didn't try any of them.
These are our pastry ingredients: flour, butter, sugar, salt, water, egg yolk. The biggest one, flour, 250 grams. The next biggest, butter, exactly half, 125 grams. Sugar, 25 grams. Salt, 5 grams. Water, 50 milliliters, and the egg yolk. This is what makes the dish work. It's the combination of all these other ingredients which you can see in any kind of dough, even a pasta, except for the butter. Half of it is butter. That's what makes it tricky. That's what makes it wonderful. The key to making the pastry is to keep all your ingredients as cold as possible. Because if you heat up, you end up creating gluten. Gluten and fat is just absolutely disgusting. So I've just sifted my flour, and then I create a well where we're going to add sugar. I'm going to add my salt to the well. I'm going to mix them together. No.
Sorry.
Leave my little fountain alone.
Sorry if I messed up your well.
Next, I'm going to add our water element. We're about to add an egg yolk, and the idea is to dissolve the salt and the sugar in the water because it ends up crystallizing the egg yolk if you don't dissolve it. And next we add the egg yolk. But this is a very basic batter preparation. The difference is what comes next. 1/4 pound of butter. No, almost a 1/2 pound of butter. A lot of butter. The fact is that butter will melt as you cook, and if it's not perfectly amalgamated by the end, it will be okay. It won't be a beautiful result if you work it too much and you knead it too much and you get it hot. Or if your son suddenly sticks his warm fingers into your otherwise...
Frederick, sorry, I'm sorry. It's tempting.
These are what are called the dry pastries. Every bit of moisture is being incorporated into the dough. And then you don't want to knead it, but you're allowed to do one smush. Then I can shape it into a circle. Next, I put it in a plastic bag, and we let this rest in the refrigerator for at least half an hour, and then we prepare the other elements in our dish.
Why are your shoes so shiny?
They're just shiny.
Those are some shiny shoes.
They're
Those are very shiny shoes. Do you guys... Okay, those are like abnormally shiny shoes.
They're kitchen clogs. They're
No,
shiny kitchen clogs.
They're covered in butter.
First thing we do while our pastry rests in the fridge is we're going to make our applesauce. 3 medium-sized apples. They can even be mixed, like these are. These just happen to be what I've got. You peel them, you core them, and we put them in acidified water, which is just water with lemon, so they don't brown. And now I'm going to chop them up, rough and quick. Next, I'm taking my chopped up apples, to which I will add a little sugar, and I toss it. Next, I add butter to my warm saute pan. I add my apples, butter going, add my cinnamon stick. In 10 minutes, the saute pan covered, it will be applesauce. Then we will scrape the applesauce into a strainer and let all the liquid drip out slowly, slowly, slowly. We want it as dry as possible, and that's going to be the base of our tart. As it happens, I made some applesauce beforehand and let it drain. It drained for about 2 hours, and quite a bit of liquid came out. What you're left with at the end is kind of, yeah, it might be applesauce that you might recognize from jars of the stuff, but it's also just this nice, quite dry paste. And that's going to be the bottom of our apple tart. Next, we prepare our tart tin, our flan with butter. We add some flour, shake it around. Next, we put this in the freezer for 2 minutes and then take it out and give it another flour dusting. Oh, and as it happens, I happen to have one that I prepared earlier, which is in need of another dusting.
Look at that. Wow. Isn't that convenient?
And now I give this one a second dusting. And you have this wonderful non-stick surface we'll be able to put our buttery pastry on top of. And now, our pastry having rested in the fridge for at least half an hour, and in this case about an hour, we're going to roll it out and hope that it doesn't fall apart too much. What you're seeing is the fragility of a dough that's 50% butter. And you can see the outlines of the butter in the dough. And it's a tiny bit warm. It might be too warm to roll out properly, but I'm going to give it a try. It wasn't an ideal rollout, but not entirely a disaster. And then we don't want to work this very hard. We lost our rim, which is a little unfortunate, but I think we can make that work too. We're going to do this. Again, not ideal, but as I said, it's butter. It will reform itself when it cooks. Poke some holes in it so that the pastry bottom doesn't rise up and lift off during the heating. This is actually a fish boner, but it works.
You're really messing this up.
Yeah, it's got a little soft. I'm actually going to do this a little kind of fast because it's got a little soft on me. And then when I finish this, it may not be the most gorgeous tart we've seen. I put it in the fridge again, let it rest for at least 30 minutes. And finally, we prepare our apples for our tart. I've skinned the apples, I've cored the apples, I've cut them in half, and now I'm going to slice them as thinly as possible and build a little circle inside the rims of the tart. Next, we assemble the tart. This is our pastry. No one could accuse it of being a work of beauty, but I think it's nevertheless going to be perfectly delicious. We start first with our now quite dry, quite thick, little cinnamon in there, applesauce. Next, our apples. Start here, try to get pretty close to the same shape.
I think you're overestimating how many apples you have.
That might be. I might have to cut some more. This is ready. It can go straight into the oven, but I do like to add a little bit of butter at the end and sprinkle with it a little bit of sugar. There's no added sugar to the apples. At the very end, it'll come out and we will paint it with some heated up apricot jam. which is the French chef's trick for all tarts and pies. It's the little apricot jam at the end gives it that little
You know, it gives it that little
Yum, 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 yum.
He's not showing you this, but usually when he makes it himself, he puts a piece of butter under every apple.
We leave it in there about 30 minutes. The temperature is 200 degrees centigrade, and then we'll have dessert. So after 40 minutes in the oven, we have our pie. You can't smell it, but it smells beautiful. It smells of October. It smells of apples.
It's pie. It's just 'cause I'm Paris. Don't look so sad.
Well, we didn't have any like hype music or fire.
Oh,
We just picked up.
So Jessica, we have our first apple pie of the fall, a tart fin de pomme. That, exactly what he said. What do you drink with it? Apple juice? Cider?
Better. Something sweet. If you have a dessert, you need a wine at least as sweet as the dessert. The tarte fin aux pommes will be perfect with a sauterne. Classic with a classic.
That looks deep and aged and
It is. It's older than the boys.
dark.
I was looking
Really?
at it. It's a 2003, so it's older than George and Frederick. It's an expensive treat, but you can share it, and you only need a little bit. So I bet when you smell this, you're going to think of apple pie. Doesn't that smell delicious?
Oh, wow.
Very delicious. Smells like pastry. Smells like caramel. Smells like brown sugar.
Forget the apple pie.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Santé.
Oh.
Santé, bonnet.
So weird. Why?
Well done. It's not too sweet. I like that.
We
Put it
ever
together.
have people over for dinner again, be such a hit.